Hare Hare Ramu Hare Ramu Ramo Ramo Hare Hare Haribo Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ramo Hare Ramo 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 Hare Nitai Gaur Haribo 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 Haribo
Tulsi Maharani ki jai. Vrindayai Tulsi Devai Priyai Kesavasya Vishnu Bhakti Prati Devi Vrindayai Tulsi Devai Priyai Kesavasya Vishnu Bhakti Prati Devi Sajavajana Mo Namaha Vrindayai Tulsi Devai Priyai Kesavasya Vishnu Bhakti Prati Devi Sajavajana Mo Namaha Vrindayai Tulsi Devai Vishnu Bhakti Prati Devi Sajavajana Mo Namaha Vrindayai Tulsi Devai
I have a few. Today's the disappearance day of Narottama Das Thakur, and we'll sing the Saparshada Goda Viraha Vilap. Ye anilo premadana karuna prachur Hino Prabhu Kata Gelacharya Thakur Gelacharya Thakur Kamora Swatu Prabhu Kahasanatan Sadhu Prabhu Kahasanatan Kahadasa Raghunatha Patita Pavan Kahamora Bhattadyuga Kahakaviraj kakale kotagela Gora Nataraj. Bashane kutibo mata anale pashibo Goranga gunera niri kotagile babo Se saba sangira sange ye koilo village Se sangana payakande narotamadas Ye anilo prema dana karuna brachur Hena Prabhu Kotagela Acharya Thakur He who brought the treasure of divine love and who was filled with compassion and mercy, where has such a personality as Srinivasacharya gone? Where are my Sarup Damodar and Rupa Goswami? Where is Sanatan? Where is Raghunath Das, the savior of the fallen? Where are my Raghunath Bhatta and Gopala Bhatta? And where is Krishnadas Kaviraj? Where did Lord Gauranga, the great dancer, suddenly go? I will smash my head against the rock and enter into the fire. Where will I find Lord Gauranga, the reservoir of all wonderful qualities? Being unable to obtain the association of Lord Gauranga, accompanied by all these devotees in whose association he performed his pastimes, Narottama Das simply weeps. Today we're going to speak about Narottama Das. It's his disappearance day. Which is a very beautiful event. But before we get to that, we'll just speak a little bit about Narottama Das Thakur's life. Om Jnana Mandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Navine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Sunyavadi Paschita Desha Tarine. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bir Krishnadas Goswami Niti Namine Namo Hamsa Nikashaya Prabhupada Priyayate Sudrida Sudi Nisyambhyam Tasha Bhakya Nuvadine. And just before we speak about Narottama Das Thakur's life, I highly recommend if you can find this book. Once we hear a little bit more about Narottama Das Thakur and his glories, it's by this person, Sitala Dasi, who's the wife of Hari Shari Das, and it's called The Glorious Life of Srila Narottama Das Thakur. It actually is written in a little bit of a like a storybook form, and it's very engaging. It's the sort of book you can read about Narottam Das Thakur, but also it reads like a novel and you can't put it down. It's very beautiful. So Narottam Das Thakur, his appearance was actually predicted by Lord Chaitanya before he left the planet. Lord Chaitanya was swimming at some point in the Ganges, and it's said that he sort of conjured or called Narottam Das Thakur to appear, and that he distributed his kirtan rasa into the Ganges, and that was sort of the calling card of Narottam Das Thakur. And finally, when Narottam Das Thakur appeared, he appeared in the family of a great king at the time. And he was a very righteous ruler. He was very beloved by his subjects, and he ran a very beautiful, pious kingdom with always singing glories to the divine couple. So he appeared after much trial to his mother, Narayani Devi, who was very entranced by this beautiful boy and took very good care of Narottama. He was the son of a Kayashta king, so he wasn't thought to be in a higher caste at the time, but nonetheless he was the king's son, so everybody knew of him. And when he was born, he had all the signs of a Mahapurush. He had very long arms, he had lotus eyes, he had all the signs of a great personality. And he was brought up with so much care and consideration and love by his parents. He was their treasure after so much trying for a child, and he was their treasure that they carefully guided in the appropriate ways. However, at some point, because the father, the king, was very magnanimous, he would invite different sages to stay at the palace sometimes, traveling mendicants or traveling preachers or different personalities. He would welcome them. He would, have them, give them place to rest, give them, prasadam, things like that, or food. And so the sages that would come from a very young age, like when Narottama was a toddler, these sages, these great personalities would speak about Lord Chaitanya particularly, because he was, unbeknownst to Narottama, or actually he was called Naru by his parents as a pet name, unknown to him, Lord Chaitanya wasn't on the planet, because when these sages spoke about him, he was just there. He had disappeared just before the advent of Narottam Das Thakur. So when Narottam heard all these sages and personalities speaking, he became very enlivened. He was very entranced and enchanted, and he was became sort of mad. He wanted to see Lord Chaitanya. He wanted to experience that, association of Lord Chaitanya. And the sages had said he was in Vrindavan or in these, different places around Puri. He was talking about all of the holy places. As the son of a Kayashta king, he wasn't really hearing about that much in detail about holy places, about Lord Chaitanya like that. They were, the king's name, I believe, was Krishnananda, yeah. So he, of course, knew about Krishna and like that, so, very pious. But Lord Chaitanya wasn't someone that was spoke about very much in the house. But when the sages came and gave him all this beautiful recollections and realizations, Narottama became very fit. He wanted to see the Lord. He wanted to meet the Lord. He wanted to hear the kirtan of the Lord. He wanted to dance with the Lord. So he started hatching a plan to leave and go to Vrindavan. And this went on for, several years until Narottama was maybe 10 or 12, like that, 14. until he just was going crazy. He kept hearing, and he, just so much information had come in, and it was like a lover who couldn't meet her beloved. He was just dying to meet him. And then, also in the meantime, the king and his wife, of course, had very high expectations of Narottama. He was going to take over the kingdom. He would be married soon. He would pretty much follow the same path as his father. That was the plan. But Narottama wasn't into that plan. He was wanting to get away from that plan. So he was thinking, how can I get out of this family life? This from a very, very young age. How can I get out of this family life? He was scheming. And he was praying too. And he was having dreams of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda and the Kirtan party, and probably glimpses about what had happened. Just, they say even like right now, just from the perspective of Lord Brahma's time, they say that we're 6 to 7 minutes late for seeing Lord Chaitanya's form and party, dancing party, kirtan party. We're just out of the, that scope. And Narottama Das Thakur had that same experience. He just was behind when Lord Chaitanya left. So finally, he got an opportunity. The king had heard about all of his extraordinary activities, or from another, actually a king from another neighboring, village or city, and he wanted to see Narottam, because by then the boy was, he had a very molten golden complexion. He was beautiful, these long arms and very, effulgent. He was always meditating on Lord Chaitanya. He was constantly absorbed. And so he looked like a very beautiful personality. So the king from a neighboring country had heard about this and asked the king of Keturi, which is where Narottam Das Thakur had appeared, Keturi. He asked the king of Keturi if he could, see his son. And at that point in time, because Narottam had wanted to leave so badly, the king and his wife thought it wise to have guards around Narottam all the time, because they wanted to make sure he wasn't abducted or worse, run away, because they could see that he wasn't really fully into getting into the family life. He wasn't really into it. So they were naturally trying to hold him there, because, kids that age, 10, 12 or whatever years old, typically they're very passionate or emotional about something, but they, in the estimation of the king, he didn't really have the wherewithal to make those kinds of decisions yet. So they were holding him in. But when the neighboring king had called him, the king of Keturi, well, the mother was horrified. His mother was horrified because she didn't want to let Narottama out of her sight for 1 second. She was constantly doting on him, attentive. Not 1 second did she let even, he went to, she put him to bed. She woke up before she was always preparing something for him. She was serving him very attentively. And she was mortified about him leaving the kingdom. But the king of Keturi, his father, said, no, don't worry, we'll send the guards with him. We'll make sure he's okay. And anyway, through divine arrangement and a series of random events, of course, somehow or other he got loose. He was free. He ran away from his guards and started on his way to Vrindavan. And, that was a long way away. Keturi is somewhere near Odisha. And maybe even up toward, the border toward Nepal. I forget where it is on the map, but it's sort of in that region. So that's a long, long, long way to walk to Vrindavan for a young man. But he was determined, so he started his march toward. and went through many trials and tribulations, and just ate roots and fruits, and sometimes accepted a little bit of milk from a house if they were so inclined. He wasn't really very concerned. So he finally made it to Vrindavan, actually. And of course he was going to all the places looking for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he was asking around. And finally, through divine intervention again, he was captured or noticed by Jiva Goswami. Before that also, Narottama was wanting to, of course, find a spiritual master. Let me back up a little bit. He had gotten to that point. There comes a point in your spiritual practice when you're really hankering to know more, but you understand that you can't have access to that sort of information about Krishna and like that unless you find a spiritual master. So part of his motivation of going to Vrindavan was to find a spiritual master. And actually, Lord Nityananda had come to him in a dream. He had so many dreams. Lord Nityananda had come to him in a dream and told him, oh, your spiritual master is Lokanath Goswami, who, there was no way to know who anyone was at the time without word of mouth. There wasn't a lot of written, what to speak of, the internet. But Lord Nityananda told him in a dream he should find this personality in Vrindavan. So there was so many reasons he was going to Vrindavan. And he actually came to Vrindavan to serve as guru, because he knew that was the way to all the wisdom and to even have access to Lord Chaitanya. He had already found out that Lord Chaitanya was not on the planet any longer. He had been to Navadvip. He had been to actually Sachimanta's house. He had spoken to Ishan, his dear servant, and he had been informed that Lord Chaitanya wasn't on the planet. So he was quite bereft, but he had hope that obviously with the help of his spiritual master, he would understand the pastimes and like that, see all the places in Vrindavan, gain access to the spiritual kingdom. Because at that point in time, his access was sequestered to these sort of small, this kingdom of Keturi and different places. He was confined. So finally, when he made it to Vrindavan, he found Lokanath Goswami, and Lokanath Goswami at first rejected him because he was a renunciate. He was a sort of a mendicant. He and his associate Bhugarbha Goswami, they weren't really, you can be a sannyasi and you can execute your own bhajan without disciples perfectly fine. And Lokanath Goswami had taken the stance that, he didn't want disciples. He was very humble. And finally, when Narottama Das Thakur found Lokanath Goswami, he begged him to accept him. And Lokanath Goswami was like, no, I don't take disciples, go away, kind of unceremoniously. Kind of like that time when Gorakishore Das Babaji was like that with Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He didn't want disciples. He just was like, go away, leave me alone, let me do my bhajan, very humble soul. So Narottama Das decided to do some humble service for Lokanath Goswami, and in that way feel connected with him. The only way you can, or the best way you can connect with the spiritual master, even without having his direct darshan or instruction, is to perform humble service from afar, and in that way Krishna in the heart can understand your intention and possibly give you an audience with your spiritual master, with a spiritual master. So he was doing that for about a year. And the service he was doing was the most humble, actually, because Lokanath Goswami, who lived in the woods, he had a very, 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 very simple area where he just had his little bhajan kutir. I think there was just some leaves, and he had very few possessions. But he went to another place to do his evacuation, somewhere near the river. When he needed to use the the bathroom, relieve himself, he went there. And Narottama Das Thakur, even after being rejected, watched Lokanath Goswami for a little bit of time secretly to just watch his movements and see what he did and learn from a spiritual master. So over those few days, he could actually understand that, I can do this, I can render this service, and he'll never know, because Lokanath Goswami was actually quite indignant, he didn't want someone, constantly underfoot, he just wanted to be unfettered, free to perform his bhajan, solitary bhajan. But Narottam Das was very persistent, and since he had been told that this was his spiritual master, not necessarily to ingratiate himself, but somewhat, but he did it very secretly, so he didn't know. Lokanath Goswami didn't know for over a year. It was a year he was doing this service. Lokanath Goswami would go to the latrine, do his things, leave, and then, Narottam Das Thakur would wait. He would come in, clean it all up. And of course, Lokanath Goswami noticed, and then at some point he noticed enough that he was like, okay, who is doing this, Who is doing this? And so one day he went and he did his business, and then he hid in some bushes to watch. And then after some time, Narottam came out and cleaned up, and then Lokanath Goswami was kind of furious, He came out and was like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? And Narottam Das was like, I'm just trying to serve you, Gurudev. And he became more upset, don't call me that. I'm not your Gurudev. Leave me alone. And he left. And Narottam Das, was a little devastated because it was a harsh rebuke, but, he was humble about it and just was going to continue, which is a wonderful lesson. The spiritual master sometimes says things to, correct us. That's what Guru does. That's what he does. He cuts. So he, was pondering the situation very little, but, decided to just continue on his path. And Lokanath Goswami, sat overnight and kind of meditated on Narottama, because Lokanath Goswami had seen that was going on for a long time. And he meditated and probably conferred with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his way. And then the next day when he saw, because Narottama wasn't going away, he saw Narottama. Narottama, was there, and Lokanath Goswami then invited him to approach him. And he told him that, his persistence, determination, and, heartfelt desire had really touched Lokanath Goswami. He was won by his love, his heart was turned. And he told Narottama that he would accept him. And actually Narottama was Lokanath Goswami's one and only disciple. So, he was a very special guru and personality and very special relationship. And that's when Lokanath Goswami, part of the instruction was to go study under Jiva Goswami. So he instructed him in that way and sort of gave him over to that ashram, because by that time Jiva Goswami, he had a place where he was teaching, he had other disciples, he had several disciples. We've heard about Srinivasacharya and Ramachandra, all the disciples and associates of Narottama. So they were there for some time. They were studying over Jiva Goswami. And at some point in time, Jiva Goswami had implored them to go out and, when he felt they were ready, it took some time, to go out and spread the word, spread the word about Lord Chaitanya and speak to others about love of Krishna and this wonderful science of bhakti yoga. And there was only books written on palm leaves at that time. The Goswamis and so many personalities, they hand scribed these scriptures on dried leaves, and that's all there was as far as copies of these scriptures, of these literatures. So he had sent his three prominent students, Jiva Goswami. He had sent Narottama Das. It's like the Three Musketeers, Srinivas Acharya and Ramachandra. So he had sent those three out to Shamananda, Shamananda. He had sent those, I'm thinking of Ramachandra because that's his good friend. He sent the three out and on sort of a bullock cart to go from village to village and talk to everybody. So they were the first book distributors. They were the first Sankirtan devotees, by instruction from Jiva Goswami. And they had a lot of experiences there, I'll say, where they were trying to distribute and met with a lot of resistance. They had the most precious treasures of these written literatures stolen by King Virambir at some point. But that resolved after that king read some of the things and also was enlightened by Krishna to some extent, so he could understand that these were very great treasures. He had stolen them originally because his advisors said that someone is coming and they're carrying great wealth. They're carrying great treasures. So the king took that as, they have gold, they have jewels, they have all these things. But actually it was just these, and they stole the whole bullock cart, but it was these, of course they are treasures, these literatures that were written, handwritten. And they had other, reverses of sorts with different personalities. They were always encountered by challenging personalities. In one memorable instance, people weren't really thinking Narottam Das Thakur was a Brahmin, even though he was, a guru by that point. There's so much to talk about Narottam Das Thakur. There's only 10 more minutes. They thought he was just a Kayashta prince. He wasn't really very worthy of being someone that's initiating and espousing love of God. They weren't thinking that he was capable. And they tried in so many ways to sort of undermine that, the caste brahmanas and those types that would feel like they have, soul reign on Krishna and his pastimes. So they were a little bit sabotaging. And, there was one funny time when they were actually coming to discredit and, try to defeat Narottama. And they were coming to where Narottama was, and they, some of his disciples actually went and they went into the marketplace on the way, and they were acting as, wallas of different sorts. I think one was a panwala and like that. So they were just blending in as like the common folk in the village. When these persons from this party, made it to the village to, they wanted pan or, whatever refreshments, look around, kind of rest for a second before they went on their way. They were talking to some of these persons that were shopkeepers, supposedly, and, asking them about Narottama, or just mentioning, and the shopkeepers, they were astonished because the shopkeepers began speaking in very fluent Sanskrit, and, talking to them about very high topics, and they appeared as very learned personalities, and the opposition was sort of like, wow, who's your guru, because they were just defeating these persons, and they said, oh, we're not disciples of anyone, but Narottama Das Thakur has taught us these things. So before they even reached the place of Narottam, they were defeated by his disciples and a little bit afraid, and they actually, went the other direction, and they were going back to their leader saying, I don't know how it's going to turn out, because these shopkeepers are even listening to this personality. They were trying to say that Narottam wasn't a learned personality, that he was an illiterate Kayasta prince, which, is a great lesson, that you never know who anybody is. And we have no idea who anybody is. So if you feel like you want to disrespect somebody or otherwise discredit them, it's 9 times out of 10, it's not going to turn out well, because everyone has some good qualities anyway. What to speak of this personality, Narottama? So his life went on like that, and he also was the inaugurator of the first Gora Purnima festival. He actually met Lord Nityananda's wives, Vasudha and Janava Devi. And at that point, Srimati Janava Thakurani was a guru in her own right. She had kind of taken over that Nityananda's line and all of his disciples. So she was the orchestrator and also the advisor and so many things to quite a lot of people. So she kind of was very favorable to Narottama and helped him to organize this Gora Purnima festival, the very first one in Keturi. And it was there where so many Vaishnavas assembled. They did a huge Vyasa Puja of sorts. They invited everybody, anybody that was inclined to this bhakti yoga or to the bhakti process at that point. They invited them to this wonderful gathering to celebrate the message of Lord Chaitanya. And it was there also where Narottama Das Thakur, who from a young life actually, or young in his life, he actually was writing songs. The song we just sung at the beginning, that was written by Narottama Das Thakur. And that was written very young, when he was very young, about the separation that he felt between himself and all these great personalities that just were out of his reach. He just missed them. So he feels this great separation to have the association of all these persons that he mentioned in this song. Swarup Damodar and Rupa Goswami. Where is Sanatan? Where is Raghunath Das? He just missed the 6 Goswamis. He just missed all these personalities. He was so bereft. He wrote that song, And he's written many, many wonderful songs of longing and realizing our position, our fallen position. I mean, this is, he was a great personality, but that's what great personalities do. They churn this for, the benefit of everyone, so we can remember and understand our connection with these acharyas, And there's actually another book that if you can find, I'm just showing these books because they're very nice. This is actually, it's called Narottama Padyavali, and it's a compendium, or it kind of summates his Prarthana and 2 of his other books with many wonderful bhajans. He's written so much that we use each day. I mean, each day we're singing a song from Narottama Das Thakur. We're singing the Tulsi Pranam each day. We're singing Guru Vastika each day, or Guru Vandana. So we're singing all these beautiful bhajans to remember, in our case, Srila Prabhupada, remember the service of Tulsi Devi being so dear, and even this song that we sing before the disappearance of any great personality, remembering those personalities in that mood of longing and separation. So he wrote, he was sort of the inaugurator of the bhajans, our modern day bhajans. He was the emperor of that, practically, because he wrote so many, very prolific. And then that continued down with, Bhaktivinoda Thakur and like that. But he really wrote the lion's share of our songs of longing and separation and appreciation with the divine, Lord Chaitanya and Radha and Krishna, the divine couple. So he's able to convey so much beautiful sentiment in that. And he really felt that. So anyway, back to his life. So at some point, it was his time to leave the planet, after showing a lot of the caste brahmanas, a lot of personalities, how a Mahaparusha conducts himself from, unknown origin, and also how we should all feel toward those objects of our love and service. And so then it was his time to depart. There's so much about his life. I mean, I can't even, this is like a 2-hour-long discourse on Narottam Das Thakur. He's one of our main acharyas, actually, I feel. He was at the Ganges, and it was very beautiful because previously, when everyone was disrespecting him, these sort of caste brahmanas, he had manifested a golden brahmana thread, which he kept on. And that was sort of a divine bestowment, so everyone could understand, yes, this person undoubtedly is a Brahmin, and has the actions of a Brahmin. And then finally, on his own accord, he went back to the place he came, to the water, and he dissolved. And it said a puddle, he was swimming, and he was with all of his associates, his disciples, and they didn't want him to leave. They knew the time had come, when the great personality is about to leave and the disciples are very connected, they can understand that, this is the time that, this is the time where my Lord will leave, He's the Lord of our lives, the spiritual master. And then with that, he kind of disappeared. He basically dissolved in this sort of milky puddle, And it said that milky, it was golden, it was shimmering on the water. Everybody could understand that was Narottama, his liquefied love. He was in his liquid form. He was in his sort of, maybe that's his eternal form, but he was just liquefied into a puddle of love from the love of Lord Chaitanya, the love of the divine couple. And, everybody could, kind of take a little of it and put it on their head. So that was sort of the Kirtan Ras, solidified or exemplified by Narottama Das Thakur. That was Lord Chaitanya's Kirtan Ras. And then that was how he departed, much to the dismay of so many personalities. Even by that time, he had won over the hearts and minds of the caste brahmanas and of so many personalities that just thought he was a materialist, or he wasn't this divine personality. So if I would encourage everyone to read a little bit more about Narottam Das Thakur. His life is really beautiful, and it's so beautifully spoken about in this book. It reads like just a beautiful story of this wonderful personality who is just completely immersed. He is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Kirtan Ras exemplified, you know, and everybody, even now, we can take little bits from that on our head by reading and singing his bhajans, trying to go deeper in our own practice with our sadhana bhakti process, with our connection with our parampara, our acharya line, and of course our deep connection with our spiritual master. All of these things are exemplified in the life and songs of Narottama Das Thakur. Oh yeah. Oh, definitely. I love Narottama Das Thakur with all my heart and soul. His bhajans are just the most sublime. They're actually my favorite. There's a few by Bhaktivinoda Thakur that really hit hard, but by far the sweetest and the most sort of heartfelt and just pulls at the heartstrings is by Narottama Das Thakur. If everyone could study those bhajans in depth, we would all easily know the heart of a devotee, of a real devotee, actually. So we're going to greet the deities, and thank you so much for your attention. Please read and study Narottama Das Thakur and try to learn his bhajans. There are everyday bhajans, and they speak to us all about our very important Hare Krishna. Yeah.
Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Bharavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandar Bhagom Vidamaniya Vishesha Shobham Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Asa Sakalem Priya Priti Manti Vasyan Dipan Kayanti Chiram Naganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadhu Jala Vigrahasya Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam
That's good. That's good. Namamishwa Ananda Rupa Salam Gokule Vrajananam Lamami Ananda Rupa Sakule Yasoda Aladavamana Janta Torutya Gopya Yasoda Violu Vamana Janta Torutya Gopya Rudam Tam Karam Yuyantamuhu Ayumena Netra Muhu Swasa Kampatvi Stita Igravam Damodaram Dvaram Damodaram Bhakti Shalila Virananda Kunde Oshamin Majantama Vishwalila Kunde Oshamin Majantama Kyapayanta Tadi Yeshitang Yeshu Bhaktarjita Tvam Punas Prematas Tam Tam Satyal Privande Yeshitang Yeshu Bhaktarjita Tvam Punas Prematas Vritivande Varam Deva Mokshana Moksha Vadimba Nachanyam Rihenam Barishadapiha Varam Deva Mokshana Moksha Vadimba Nachanyam Rihenam Barishadapiha Idante vapurnatam gopalavala Sadame manasya virastam kimanyai Idante vapurnatam gopalavala Sadame manasya virastam kimanyai Idante mukambo Matyanta nilai Vitam kuntalai singarasa Ante mukanta nilai Singarasa shagota Kumbitam bimbara Manas alam lakshala Mumitam rame Manasya virastam alam Ananta Vishnu Jala Vimagna Krishna Nambatanu Grihane San Avyasi Diksha Nambatanu Grihane Samama Jnane Dyakshirisha Kuberas Majau Bhagan Murtyaya Yadva Tvaya Bhakti Vajau Krita Kuberas Majau Bhakta Murtyaya Yadva Tvaya Bhakti Vajau Krita Tata Prema Bhakti Tim swakam me praya namokshe graho me sti kam me prayacha namo aste studamme spudadiptidamme Tvadiyo darayata vishwasadanme Tvadiyo darayata vishwasadanme Namo radhikaya tvadiya priyaya Namo Vayatuya Namo Radhikaya Tvadiyai Priyaya Namo Nantalilaya Devayatuya Namo Radhikaya Tvadiyai Priyaya Namo Nantalilaya Devayatuya Namo Radhikaya Tvadiyai Priyaya Namo Nantalilaya Devaya Hare Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Rama 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 Hare Jaya Radha Shri Radhe Jaya Radha Goloka Nanda Lira Jaya Giri Giri Govardhan Jaya Giri Govardhan Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Shila Prabhupada.
Who stole the butter that the gopis kept hanging from the rafters of their storerooms, and then quickly jumped up and ran in retreat in fear of Mother Yashoda, but was ultimately caught. To that Supreme Lord Sri Damodar I offer my humble obeisances. Upon seeing his mother's whipping stick, he cried and rubbed his eyes again and again with his two lotus hands. His eyes were fearful, and Yashoda bound his belly with ropes. He shivered in fright, and his pearl necklace shook. To this Supreme Lord Sri Damodar, who is bound by his devotees' love, I offer my humble obeisances. Those super excellent pastimes of Lord Krishna's babyhood drown the inhabitants of Gokula in pools of ecstasy. To the devotees who are attracted only to his majestic aspect of Narayan and Vaikuntha, the Lord herein reveals, I am conquered and overwhelmed by pure loving devotion. To the Supreme Lord, Damodar, my obeisances hundreds and hundreds of times. O Lord, although you are able to give all kinds of benedictions, I do not pray to you for liberation, nor eternal life in Vaikuntha, nor any other boon. My only prayer is that your childhood pastimes may constantly appear in my mind. O Lord, I do not even want to know your feature of Paramatma. I simply want